today I'm excited to welcome Dr. Glenn Livingston to the Beyond Emotional Eating podcast. Dr. Glenn is a psychiatrist. He's an author of 8 books, and his recent book is Defeat Your Cravings. And he's a leading expert in behavioral change. After years of working with people who struggle with overeating and food obsession, he became frustrated with the answers traditional psychology had to offer. He believed there had to be a better way. That question led him to a decades-long journey. Along with helping his own patients, he conducted a self-funded research that studied involving more than 40,000 participants to better understand binge eating, overeating, and food cravings. But Dr. Glenn's work isn't just professional, it's personal. He once struggled with obesity and felt trapped by food himself. Through his own experience, he found a path of a healthy weight and much more peaceful relationship with food. That personal journey has shaped the practical strategies he now teaches to help others regain control of their eating habits. His work has been featured in major publications such as New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Chicago Sun-Times. And he has appeared on national television and radio programs sharing his research and insights. Today, we're going to explore a different perspective on emotional eating and cravings and lasting behavioral change. Whether you're struggling with overeating for years or simply want to understand why food feels so powerful, I think you're going to find that this conversation both thought-provoking and practical. So today I'm excited to welcome Dr. Glenn Livingston to our Beyond Emotional Eating podcast. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Livingston.
Oh, it's very nice to meet you here, and I've been looking forward to this. And please call me Glenn.
Glenn, okay, I will. So I'm looking forward to this conversation today because it's actually a topic that so many people resonate with because emotional eating isn't just all about food. It's about the beliefs and the coping patterns and the emotional conditioning that we develop way before we even start using food as a comfort. So I know many of my listeners have spent many years believing they lack willpower, when in reality, there's so much more happening beneath the surface. And my hope today is that the conversation that we have will help people better understand those deeper patterns. So many people believe that emotional eating is lack of willpower, but after decades of your researching overeating and working with thousands of people, you've come to a different conclusion. What do you believe is really happening beneath the surface?
Well, that's a 50-cent question. That's a big question. Okay, well, let me just start by saying that I'm not just a doctor who works with overeaters. I'm someone who had a very serious problem with food myself, and that I come from a family of psychologists. And literally 17 people in my family are
Wow.
psychologists or yeah. If something breaks in the house, we all rush over and ask it how it feels, and nobody can fix it. Um, but it's kind of important because the approach that I originally took when I was looking to solve my own overeating problem was the idea that I had a hole in my heart. And if I could fill that hole in my heart, that I wouldn't have to keep trying to fill the hole in my stomach. And I want to say there's an awful lot of confusion about that approach in the culture today. There's an awful lot of confusion about what causes overeating. There's an awful lot of confusion about the interplay between emotions and overeating. And there's an awful lot of shame that's unnecessary. Okay.
Very much.
Um, so let me say that my journey towards overcoming that involved much of the traditional pursuit in overeating at the time. So I confessed my soul. I cried about the things I was supposed to cry about, and I screamed where I had to scream. And I went to Overeaters Anonymous, and I had a spiritual awakening, and I would always get a little thinner and a lot fatter, a little thinner and a lot fatter, a little thinner and a lot fatter, right?
Yes.
Now, the good thing that happened was along that whole journey, I also came to hate myself less. It did work for the shame. I felt less ashamed. I just felt like I was a lovable soul with an eating problem. That's so I went from thinking that I'm this no good, horrible person who just can't control myself and I'm pathetic to feeling like I'm a lovable person with an eating problem. But that didn't really solve the whole problem. There were other things that had to be done. Um, Along the way, also because my ex-wife of 28 years traveled for business and we didn't have kids and I didn't commute for that reason, I had a lot of time in my hands. And so I started consulting. I started consulting for industry, and I was on the wrong side of the war. I'm making up for it now, but in my 20s and 30s, I was chasing the Benjamins and I was working with, some very big food companies selling some, sugar and mixtures of excitotoxins and salt and fat and the things that are really targeted at getting your reptilian brain to feel a sense of bliss without really giving you nutrition to feel satisfied. And the result of that is that your brain and your body want more. Not because you're a shameful person, not because you're emotionally damaged, not because you peeked at your sister in the bathtub when you were a little boy, but because that's how the brain works and that's how the body works. So when you don't have adequate nutrition, and most people think that they have adequate nutrition, but they don't, if you don't have adequate nutrition, your body's just going to say more and more and more. And thank goodness it does. That kept us alive for a lot of years. Like 100,000 years ago, we um, we didn't have these bags and boxes and containers of stuff. We didn't have, Doritos and Pop Tarts and Twinkies and, pints of Ben and Jerry's. We didn't have those things on the savannah. It's more like, oh, Thag eats too much mammoth. Thag feel horrible. Right. So, so I think that should start to lift some of the shame also, just to recognize that Jakarta Krishnamurti said that it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick food environment, right?
Right.
So we're all walking around saying, well, gee, I wish I could just eat a normal amount. Well, but you're wanting to have a normal amount of poison. This stuff is, supersized stimuli designed to press your evolutionary buttons. Um, I should just be a little careful because this works even if you don't believe in evolution, some of the way the brain is set up.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's designed to press the um, most dire. There's a construction person underneath me. I don't believe this. I'm sorry.
That's
Hopefully it won't be for long. I'm just going to ignore it. Um, and so the the first problem is that there are there are people who are paid an awful lot of money. Rocket science paid an awful lot of money in these big companies to design these food-like substances that make you want more. There are even chemicals in the packaging that turn off your ability to know when you're hungry and full. And so this idea that we should just be able to mindlessly eat a bag of potato chips when everything about that bag of potato chips is designed to keep you eating it without getting satisfied is it's kind of a silly idea, I think, in the first place. It's if you're going to eat potato chips, I think you should eat them mindfully. I think mindful eating is a very good idea, but there are forces beyond that. It's not really possible to be purely mindful, purely emotionally healed, and then still expect to eat normal. I mean,
right.
look at what's happening in our society. Look at 40% of the people being obese and the
Mm.
incidence of cardiovascular and kidney disease and all the things that are either diet preventable or diet reversible. Um, okay, so it's not just a matter of willpower because of all the things meant to overpower you. It's also not the case that if you have stronger cravings than most people, that you have a disease or that you're sick. There's not necessarily something wrong with you. If you think about it, 100,000 years ago, when the cavemen were on the savannah or the cave women were on the savannah, It was the cavemen and women who had the strongest cravings that were most motivated to find and consume food, right? So
Yes.
they were actually healthier than the average person. So your ancestors, if you have stronger cravings, are healthier, stronger people, not weaker or more diseased people. So it's really important to recognize that you're not a sick person because you have cravings and you feel overwhelmed by these things. It's more like a very healthy characteristic, a very healthy aspect of your physiology that unfortunately is being taken advantage by a very diseased environment. So there's that thing also. Okay. Then you need to understand that the reptilian brain is designed in such a way to take over when it perceives there to be an emergency. And the key word there is perception. So when resources are perceived to be available, which were scarce in the past, concentrated forms of calories, sugar, salt, that just didn't exist a long time ago. Or when you get overly tired or hungry or, yes, depressed or anxious or angry or sad, then your reptilian brain is designed, this is your reptilian brain, it's designed to push your neocortex out of the way. The neocortex is the part of your brain where love lives, which says, before you act. So the reptilian brain, let's pretend my fist is the reptilian brain. It's really just about survival. Eat, mate, or kill. It's like a bad college drinking game.
Right.
Right? The neocortex says before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what impact does it have on the people that you love? What impact does it have on your longer term goals? But for survival, we're designed in such a way that this can push this thing out of the way if there is an emergency perceived. So what you come to is that overcoming overeating is not really just a matter of solving your emotions, because your emotions are just one thing that can influence an emergency. And it's also even a more complicated relationship than that. Remind me afterwards, and we'll go back to why overeating can actually reinforce certain difficult emotions, not just stuff them down. Um, and so, in order to overcome it, for me to overcome it, I had to thank all of my therapists and the people at Overeaters Anonymous and everyone who led me on the journey that caused me to love myself more without really solving the eating problem. And I had to set up a system which really alerted me when this thing was active. Because what I really needed to do was figure out how to calm this part of my brain down and get back into my neocortex when I was about to make a bad decision. So I did something kind of embarrassing. I'm going to use different words for it than I used back then because I never thought I was going to teach all this stuff. I really thought this was just a private thing, and eating was the bane of my existence. So I said, I'm going to draw lines in the sand. So I'm going to say, I'm only ever going to have chocolate again on a weekend. I'm never going to do it on a weekday, just 2 ounces on a weekend, and only after I had a good workout. That way, if I was at a coffee shop and I saw a chocolate bar at the counter, I wasn't going to check out. And I heard this little voice in my head that said, you know what, Glenn? You worked out hard enough. A little bit of chocolate's not going to kill you. I know it's a Wednesday and you have your silly rule, but you could start your silly rule again tomorrow.
Right.
That's no problem, right? I would say, wait a minute, that's not me. Now, I wish I called it something different. I could have called it my food monster, but the truth is I called it my inner pig. I said, Glenn, that's not me. That's my inner pig squealing for pig slop. I chocolate on a Wednesday is pig slop. I don't eat pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. Um, I wish I could tell you that was the entire cure, but it was a different way of approaching things. And what actually happened was that it wasn't a miracle in the sense that I got thin right away or anything, but it would give me those extra microseconds at the moment of impulse to wake up and make a different decision if I wanted to. Now, it turned out that there were a number of things I needed to do at the moment of impulse in order to make those better decisions. And among them, for me personally, was disempowering what the pig was actually saying. So I would have to say, you know what? The pig says it'll be just as easy to start again tomorrow, but that's not really true because the way the brain works, if you see chocolate today and you have a craving for chocolate and you tell yourself it'll be just as easy to start again tomorrow, and then you eat the chocolate, you'll reinforce the craving and you'll reinforce the thought. So you'll be more likely to have the thought tomorrow that says just start again tomorrow, and you'll be more likely to have a deeper craving. The only way to eat healthy is in the present moment, and if you're in a hole, you should stop digging. So I'll pause for a second if you want me to, but that's kind of how I got better was I would identify all the things my pig was saying and I would tell it why it was wrong, figure out where it was lying. The pig would say that it was genetic and I was doomed. My parents were fat, so I don't have a choice. And it turns out that diet and lifestyle account for more than half the variance in obesity. So there is a genetic component, and it does make it a higher mountain decline for some people like me. But that doesn't mean that you're doomed. It just means that it's a higher mountain decline. Um, it would say that, one bite's not going to hurt. And then I would have to say, well, one bite is the difference between who's in charge, you or me, Mr. Pig, and I would much prefer to be in charge. I know this is silly, but these are the kind of things that work
It's not
for me.
actually teach the power of pause. So basically, that's what you're saying is, you're taking a moment and pausing and asking yourself, do I need this? Why do I need this?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, and what's also a problem in our culture is that we're told we shouldn't set up these rules. Or say that rules make you feel rebellious, and so you shouldn't set them up. And they suggest that you try to just eat well 90% of the time instead. So don't have chocolate 90% of the time. The problem with that is how do you decide which is the 10% and which is the 90%?
exactly. Right.
And in the absence of knowing that, every time you're in front of any chocolate opportunity, you have to make another decision. Decisions require willpower. See, and there's nobody that can make 150 chocolate decisions a day. I'm exaggerating a little bit,
Right, right.
but but if I say I'm only going to have it on Saturdays, I've made all of my chocolate decisions already. Now I've obliviated the need for willpower. So, Amy, there were things like that. There were setting up rules like that. There was learning that a lot of it had to do with calming down my brain in the first place and telling it that there was no emergency.
Right.
So I learned to do what Laurie Hammond calls the 7-11 breath, where you breathe in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11. What that does is it gets you into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of what the reptilian brain does. The reptilian brain activates your sympathetic nervous system, which says there's an emergency. We have to forget about all of our rational thinking and just go after this and, just hand over the cheesecake and nobody gets hurt.
Right.
Whereas your parasympathetic nervous system says, okay, there's no hungry bear chasing us. This is a good time to rest and digest and strategize and think and plan. Um, and so there was breathing, there was making sure I had good nutrition in the first place. So I stopped skipping meals. I gravitated towards more whole foods. I was eating less bags and boxes and containers. And the more that I did that, the easier it got. I paid more attention to my sleep. I paid more attention to my exercise. I paid more attention to just kind of keeping connected with a social tribe so that I didn't feel isolated. And all of the things together, they kind of work synergistically to obliviate the need for willpower because the cravings were much lower. And I had these tripwires set up so I knew when I was in trouble and I wasn't confused thinking that the pig's ideas were good ideas. You can call this a food monster, by the way. You don't like, I really am a sophisticated psychologist and you heard my credentials and everything, but this is what worked. And so this is what I wound
Hey,
up
I think
talking
it's
about.
great. You meet people where they're at, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, then the last part of emotional eating that people don't really understand is that um, emotions can generally be measured as a physiological response. So when someone is anxious, their blood pressure goes up a little bit. So does their galvanic skin response. So does their respiration and perspiration and their heartbeat. When you measure those kinds of things in animals and you give them a food reward, this works most effectively with sugar. If you give them a sugar reward when those body measurements go up, it turns out that those animals as a group, as a whole, tend to have a higher average perspiration, respiration, and galvanic skin response than if they were never conditioned with sugar rewards to have those. So, what does that have to do with eating? Well, a lot of people tell me that they eat when they're anxious. I can't get to sleep at night unless I have a whole big plate of pasta or, a whole bunch of carbs, right? You've heard that before, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that big plate of pasta has an anesthetic effect on the nervous system because the nervous system can't conduct the emotions as well when the digestive system is overloaded. There's just not enough energy available to do it. So we learn that there's a quote unquote numbing effect, and we say, well, it's comfort food. We're eating for comfort. But what's also happening is you're teaching your body that when it produces this anxious state, that it's going to acquire calories and mass, right?
Right.
And so because because we evolved in a situation where food was not always plentiful, we're very, very sensitive to what conditions lead to the acquisition of calories and mass. And so in effect, you're conditioning your body to produce more anxiety while you think that you're numbing out from anxiety. Same thing with smoking. Smoking doesn't actually make you calmer, it makes you tenser overall. And then when you have a cigarette, it goes down temporarily for a little bit. Um, so it's not a one-way relationship where anxiety causes the cheesecake or depression causes the cheesecake. It's I've seen studies where we observe 22% more depression in people who are eating more junk food. So the the things that we're eating for quote unquote comfort are really anything but comforting. They're temporarily anesthetic, but long term making the problem a lot worse. Um, and there are literally tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, that go into convincing us that these things are good for us, right? So tell me when you want me to stop, but
No, it's fine. You are right though, because when you look at a packaging in a store, all the good stuff is there are advertisements in the front, how good it is for you, and it's packed with certain nutrients. But if you turn it around and read the label, it is not good for you.
right, right, because all our brains really want is plausible deniability. We
Yes,
want to believe that we're eating healthy. We don't really want to eat healthy,
so
right?
true. Yes.
Um, and so when you see a bag of potato chips and there's a big green star in the front that says, now made with avocado oil, high in vitamin E. Well, okay, but do you know that when you heat avocado oil to the level so that you have to heat it to in order to make potato chips, that you create carcinogenic substances? Do you know
Absolutely.
that even when you heat the potatoes to those levels, you can create HCAs and hydrocyclic amines, I think they're called.
Yeah.
But your body says, no, there's avocado oil. This is good for me.
Right.
And does anybody really think potato chips are nutritious? Does anybody really?
Right. Hmm.
But at the moment, it seems like a good idea, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that I could tell you stories about a food bar manufacturer shall remain nameless so I don't get sued, um, where they took the vitamins out of the bar to put the money into the packaging instead. Because if they made the packaging more vibrant and multicolored and diverse, they found that people were more likely to buy it. So multicolored, diverse packaging, if you were to come across a field of vegetables, blueberries is not a vegetable, blueberries, green carrots, purple cabbage, um, red tomatoes. If you eat the rainbow, you're more likely to get a diversity of micronutrients. So it's an evolutionary advantage. So we have a kind of variety impulse in our brain that pushes us towards a diversity of color. Um, However, in this case, the diversity of color is actually predatory because the nutrition has been taken out and put into faking you out instead. Um, we also have that diversity impulse for taste. So when you come to a field of tomatoes, if there's a slight variation in the taste of the tomatoes, then there's probably a slight variation in nutrients, which means you're more likely to get a full complement of nutrients. Well, so don't you know that it's not uncommon for, let's say, with chip manufacturers to not manufacture the chips on a unitary assembly line, but to manufacture them on a half a dozen assembly lines with slight variations in flavors, so that as you're eating, you think you're getting a diversity of nutrients.
Interesting.
So there are these types of things that go on all over the industry. The advertising industry, um, they're really good at making you think that you need what you don't need.
Yes.
So people think that advertising doesn't impact them, but it actually impacts you more when you think that it doesn't impact you because your guard is down. And, you know, there, the last study that I saw, which was a while ago, said that there were between 5,000 and 7,000 messages aired across the internet and television about packaged goods, about food, and maybe a half dozen of them were encouraging people to eat more fruits and vegetables because there's not really money in selling you fruits and vegetables.
Not a cent. Not really.
Right. So, I mean, so you hopefully are getting a sense that there's an overwhelming set of forces and marketing conditions that create the perfect storm to make um, overeating the default response. And it's not a surprise then that we live in a society where everybody encourages each other to slowly kill themselves with food. Just a little one hurt, a little bit in moderation. Um, and we're all living, staring at screens, hoping that electrons flow into our bank account, and um, and munching on chips while we do that. So, when you ask me, is it a matter of willpower? It's really not. There are moments when you have to use willpower before you have extinguished your cravings, and we should talk about what that means also. There are moments when you have to rely on willpower, but there's so many other factors that people are not aware of, and there's so much misinformation in the culture that to focus on to focus on your character, yourself as a person, your tendency towards becoming emotional, and thinking that that's really going to fix the problem. It won't. It'll make you love yourself more, but it won't fix the problem. Um, okay, so what does fix the problem? Should we talk about that, or do you want to
I
say
think I
something?
was just, no, actually, I was just about to ask you what helps, what helps people with their cravings? How can they start to see the other end of that?
Okay. The first is that you need to get comfortable with making a rule for yourself because setting up a rule, it's like drawing a clear target on an archery target. You need to know where the bullseye is. If you don't know where the bullseye is, if you're playing blind archery, you're not going to know by how much you missed it and in what direction so that you can make adjustments in order to hit the bullseye more times. We're told to focus on progress, not perfection, but it's only half the story, right? When an archer is aiming at the bullseye, he or she is not saying, when a good archer is aiming at the bullseye, they're not saying, maybe I'll hit it, maybe I won't. I'm just going to do the best I can. That's not what they're saying. Ask an Olympic archer who only hits the bullseye 40% of the time, but ask an Olympic archer what they're thinking. They'll say, well, I don't let go of the arrow. They call it loosing the arrow. I don't loose the arrow until I can see it going into the target. It's almost like I'm one with the target. I purge my mind of doubt and insecurity, and I commit with perfection. Now, if I miss, I forgive myself with dignity. I don't say, oh my God, I'm a pathetic archer. I should just shoot the rest of the arrows off the target, which is what we tend to do with food.
Yeah.
Then you have to say progress, not perfection. But it's not just a dismissal. It's a it's a turning. It's an active focus on what I can learn from every shot, right? So how did I miss it? By how much and in what direction? And what adjustments should I make so that I can commit with perfection again? So I say you need to kind of adopt this philosophy of committing with perfection, but forgiving yourself with dignity. Um, People are frightened of rules because they think that if they make a mistake, that they're just going to beat themselves up more.
Yeah.
But that's using perfectionism in the wrong direction. See, what I say is that our pigs, no matter what you do, you're going to be using perfectionism, right? If you aim in a wishy-washy way, just progress, not perfection. I can't have any rules. Rules are too scary for me. Um, and then you really miss the target. I know you're going to beat yourself up. I know you're going to say, well, if I'm not perfect, then I'm nothing. I might as well finish the whole bag. Heck, I'll start again tomorrow. Okay, let's go get a pint of ice cream or a quart of ice cream. Um, so, so you're using perfectionism one way or the other. The trick is not to let the pig use it against you. The pig wants you to aim in a wishy-washy way, but then aggressively beat you up after you miss the target, because then you'll feel too weak to resist the neck bend, and you won't take a shot at the target again. You'll just go, what the hell, for, a couple of days, probably. So you want to flip it and aim with perfection, but forgive yourself with dignity. The pig wants you to do just the opposite. Okay, so once you know that, then you have a vehicle for reinstalling the learning mechanism that can help you to stop overeating. Then you need to understand the way that cravings work, because people have this expectation that their cravings are going to go away in a straight line like this, like day by day, it's just going to get easier. And so when that doesn't happen, what actually happens, it goes like this. And then it goes down. There's something called an extinction burst. And when that happens, they get terrified and they think that it's not working and the cravings are going to last forever. So I'd like to spend a little while talking about what cravings are and how they work and how they're extinguished. Because,
Absolutely.
okay, so cravings come in trigger craving pairs. I call it a food stimulus because I don't like the word trigger, because trigger sounds like an automated system. And the brain does want to automate it, but you can de-automate it. So I call it a food cue. So it comes in pairs. I drive past the donut store sign on the way home from work. I say, oh, donuts are available. Nom, nom, nom. And I run into the donut store. I get 4 donuts and I think, why did I do that? And I go home and I feel horrible. And I'm developing a little punch and I want to stop. So then I make a rule for myself that says, okay, I never eat donuts on the way home from work, no matter how bad the craving is. Um, Now, so the sign is the stimulus, the donut is the reinforcer, or the food stimulus, or the reward. Okay, let's take this back 100,000 years ago. Let's say we have a theoretical caveman named Thag, Thag, because I like the name. And Thag sees a monkey and then follows the monkey to a banana tree. And so Thag's brain says, ooh, monkeys equal bananas. And so Thag's brain, the next time that it sees a monkey, secretes an awful lot of dopamine, makes Thag all excited to go follow the monkey to the banana tree. And this really works for Thag. He's got a real habit. If Thag sees a monkey and doesn't go to the banana tree, Thag's brain drops the dopamine way down and makes Thag miserable. So Thag feels like he has to go to the banana tree. This is a good thing because in a scarce food environment, having a monkey that leads you to a banana tree is an evolutionary advantage. It's a survival advantage, right? Well, now it's later in the season. Thag has been following monkeys all season. His family's getting fat. He's getting fat, but that was a good thing back then. And all of a sudden, Thag follows a monkey to a banana tree and there are no bananas. And the question is, does Thag at that point give up and stop following monkeys? And the answer is no. His brain doubles down, secretes maybe twice the amount of dopamine to get him to do it, makes him twice as miserable if he doesn't do it. This is the extinction burst that we're talking about. Why does the brain do that? Because it turns out in a scarce food environment that having a monkey that leads you to a banana tree half the time, or even 20% of the time, is better than having no monkeys at all. And this is why slot machines are so addictive. They run on what's called variable ratio reinforcement. You
Yeah.
don't know when it's going to pay off. So you find all the little old ladies at the slot machines going, gotta be here, gotta be here, gotta be here. What do you think would happen if you program the slot machine to only pay off on Saturdays at 10? The casinos would empty out during the week, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's the equivalent. What happens with with the donut store is I have a couple of days of a little honeymoon, and then my brain says, what happened to the donut store sign as the cue? The donut store sign is the monkey. What happened to my monkey that led me to my banana? What happened to my sign that led me to my donuts? I bet it became randomly available. Maybe it's later in the season. I don't want to give up this thing that I think is keeping me alive because your brain thinks that binging is keeping you alive. So I don't want to give up this sign. I'm gonna get this guy to double down. And so it makes a worse craving than you've ever had. Now, what most people do at that point is they say, oh my God, this is going to last forever. This is more torturous than I imagined. I'm addicted to donuts. So be it. That's how it's going to be. They give in and they have a donut. What have they taught their brain at that point? That it was right. See, that was a good idea that you double down. And so now they're starting the curve all over again, except it's stronger. What you need to do when you hit this extinction burst is nothing. You need to say, my pig says that this is going to last forever. This is too torturous, but it's not, because if you stick with it, and for a daily habit, this usually is somewhere around days 4 to 7, maybe 10. If you get through that first week, then the brain will say, okay, it's certainly not working. I don't want to waste energy and effort pursuing a stimulus that doesn't work. So I'm going to start to let it come down. I'm going to start reducing my efforts. I'm still going to try a little bit, but I'm going to reduce my efforts. Somewhere around the 21 to 30 day mark, it's almost dead. There are a couple of little mini bursts just in case. And then it will label the craving as dormant. You ever talk to an ex-smoker and they say, I don't know how I ever had so much trouble with this. I don't crave it at all anymore.
Right, right.
That's what happens is it's labeled it as dormant. The problem down here is that people say, oh, I don't know why this was ever a problem. I'm not addicted to donuts. Let me have a couple, right? And so they did it again. They told the brain, oh, see, they're still available. Let's go. What you need to do is stick it out and get through. There's one more little trap that people get into, which is not understanding that cravings aren't really for donuts in particular. They're for donuts in response to a particular food cue. So in this case, let's say I go through 30 days, and by the end of 30 to 45 days, I just don't have the craving when I'm driving home from work anymore. But then my dad invites me to play poker. And I go to his place on a Saturday, and there's a big box of donuts, and I have the worst craving I've had in forever. Did I fail in extinguishing my donut craving? Their answer is no. I succeeded in extinguishing the donut store sign as my donut trigger for donut craving. I did not extinguish my father's place. So as a matter of practice, you need to make a list of all the places and times that you might experience this, and then set up additional supports in anticipation. So I might set up an email to arrive the day before the poker game that says, Glenn, have a little bit of extra fruit that day and make sure that you've eaten something low glycemic to keep your blood sugar even. And here are all the reasons. I'll make a list of my big why. Um, I want to be a tall, thin leader. I want to be free of worry from cardiovascular problems. I want to have the energy to play with my niece and my nephew and the dogs, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so when you understand how cravings work and you understand that you're not sick and you understand that you need rules in order to alert you when you're about to cross the line so you have an opportunity to do something, when you understand how to forgive yourself with dignity and learn from your mistakes rather than beat yourself up and eat more, then then you're in a much better position to start doing something about it. So it starts with one simple rule, any rule. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you want to ask yourself, what's one simple thing I could do that would move the bar in the right direction? I'm looking for a low bar. I'm looking for a low bar, something I can hop over every day, even if I wake up without my mojo. Because what happens? Most people get really excited about a diet that they read and they make all these high bars, and I'm just going to do this. And in 20 days, I'm going to be skinny. And
Funny, it's usually 3 or 4.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to make up for this really quickly. I know I was eating horrible now, but now I'm going to eat, better than God. And that never works because it's hard to wake up with that kind of motivation every day. But if you pick something I always put my fork down between bites, or um, I knew this truck driver who had to lose 150 pounds, and he said, I have to eat fast food at a truck stop 3 times a day, but I'll tell you what, I won't go back for seconds. And sometimes it's I never have chocolate on a weekday. Sometimes it's I only eat pretzels at Major League Baseball studios. But it's just one thing. And I find that most people know what that one thing should be. And that way you start to see yourself day after day doing something different. And you're beating that sense of hopelessness and powerlessness because overeating tends to cycle down because of all the reasons we're talking about. And people feel like it's hopeless and they should just give up and be a happy fat person and just deal with it. Um, but when you start with one simple thing and you do it every day, it starts to become part of your identity. You start to develop more of a success identity, and it's something you do because of it's who you are. It's not something you do because there's some Nazi food policeman saying you can't do this, right? Because that
Right.
doesn't last. Not Nazi food
Not at
police
all.
don't last, right?
No.
And so then when you have a rule, I always put my fork down between bites, for example, and you're sitting down at the table and you're about to take that second bite, you might hear a little voice in your head saying, "Oh, this is silly. Just go ahead and have the extra bite," right? See, now you have a tripwire that alerts you when you're about to break your own best thinking. Now you have a choice then, and it's going to feel like there's a locomotive at first. It's going to feel like you have to do everything you can to stop yourself at that moment, but at least you have that choice. When you can wake up at that moment, then you can take that breath and you can say, why is my pig lying to me? It's saying it would be better to just ignore the silly rule and keep going. But, I set up this rule when I was of sound mind and I had the forethought and fortitude to put it together for myself. This was my higher self that came up with the rule. Right now, my lower self is here. How bad would it hurt if I put the fork down for a second? I can have that next bite in a minute anyway. There's nothing I can't eat or anything I can't do. I'm just choosing not to today. And you take that breath and you do it and you say, okay, now why was the pig wrong? Well, it was wrong because I really wanted to be more in charge, because I wanted to be more mindful while I was eating, because I wanted my digestion to be better, because I wanted to be more present with the food that I was eating so that I would allow it to nourish me and know when I was full. Um, and you remember all those reasons that you had, and now you're back in your higher self. Um, so that's how it all starts. And then slowly but surely you add more rules that, you know, make up a consistent food plan for you that allows you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And that's how it works. That's
So
how it works. Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking of a client specifically. Um, what do you tell a client that says that they just cannot, when you're talking about stopping and pausing and thinking and about what you're eating, and they say they can't do that? I hear this a lot, and they say, and I try to lead this person into maybe journaling, or I talk about emotions a lot.
Hmm.
So, um, my business is beyond emotional eating. And I think it's very important to make sure that you express why you're eating. And so I guess my question to you is, what do you say to someone that it always comes back with a reason why they can't do a specific, way of thinking or something?
We'll look at the specific reason and see if we can disempower that. But the general answer is you can't do it yet. They'll say, I can't do that. And I'll say, well, not yet. But would you consider saying, I'm becoming a person who can who can pause before they eat? I'm becoming someone who can challenge these thoughts. I'm becoming someone who, and then usually when someone says that, it's a result of having been asking themselves the wrong question. They've usually been asking, why can't I stop overeating? And the questions that you ask yourself determine the evidence that you collect. So when you say, why can't I stop overeating? You're telling your brain to find evidence that you can't stop overeating. And you've been collecting that evidence for a long time. So of course it feels impossible to stop overeating because you have all this evidence that you can't stop overeating. If you start to collect evidence of success instead, you know, I had 5 cupcakes, but not 15. That's better. No, seriously, it's better.
Yes, right.
And and how did I manage to stop at 5? Like focus on the success rather than the failure. How did I manage to stop at 5? If you focus on it, that will grow. And you will start to feel like someone who has the power to stop overeating. Um, Sometimes I will say, well, I want you to do a hypothetical experiment with me. Just do a thought experiment. I'll ask them, who do you love most in this world? Sometimes they'll say their kids. Sometimes they'll say their dog. Sometimes it's a public figure. I'll say, okay, but that's the person you love most. What do you love about them? And they'll go into great detail about it. I'll say, okay, pretend like there's an evil dictator and they kidnap this person. And if you if you never break your rule again, this person is going to live freely in their country, going about their business, and they're going to have a wonderful life. However, if you break it by even one little bit, ever, even accidentally, then this person is going to take the entire resources of their country, put them in a dungeon, and torture them every day of the rest of their life. Would you break the rule or not? And they'll say, well, of course I wouldn't. And they'll tell me I'm being really silly. But what that points out is that they're capable of sticking with the rule if it's important enough to them. And so then we'll start to focus on making it more important to them. And why do they have this perception that they're powerless when they're really not? Um, I have softer versions of that thought experiment also for people that object to it, but that's what I do. But mostly I intervene because that's a very pernicious thought process. I can't. That that says I couldn't, so I can't. My experience so far is that I could not, therefore I can't. But if you think about it, that's the experience of learning how to do anything worthwhile in this world. And we don't tell our children you couldn't, so you can't, right? You've been crawling around for years already. You obviously can't stand and walk. Just give up and crawl the rest of your life, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or you've been going potty in your diaper forever. You couldn't use the potty. Obviously, you can't use the potty. So just give up. You couldn't, so you can't. The truth is you can't until you can. That's how life works. Anything worthwhile um, is generally required a multitude of learning attempts. They're interestingly, one of the only types of learning that can be done at a single trial has to do with food. If you eat something that has poison in it, you will learn never to eat that thing again really quickly. But it's got to be very strong poison and it can't be really covered up. And
Right.
but otherwise, everything, learning a language, learning math, learning how to date, learning how to be married, it requires repeated attempts. You can't until you can. So that's what I tell them.
I love that. You can't till you can. That's great. I
Well,
like that.
and if you ask, how can I learn to stop sooner? How can I learn to follow my rule? Then you're going to collect evidence that you can, and you'll start to develop a success identity. So, and I've had clients where the only intervention that I made with them was to aggressively focus on what they did right. and just kind of reorient them from all of the negativity over and over and over again until it really stuck.
So for our last question, if listeners forget everything that we said today, what is one thing that you would like them to remember?
Start with one simple rule and be kind to yourself if you make a mistake.
I do want to give you a chance to tell everybody, where to find you and things like that. So,
Okay. You can find me in Pompano Beach, Florida. I'm just kidding.
you.
Um, I have a website, which is where you'll find everything at defeatyourcravings.com. I'm all about cravings, defeatyourcravings.com. When you go there, if you click on the big blue button that says free reader bonuses, you will get a copy of the book in Kindle, Nook, or PDF for free. This is my eighth book, by the way, my eighth and best, with the benefit of having worked with 2,000 clients and 10 years of doing this in the field. It's got all the science in there also. So click on the big free blue reader bonus button. You will also get a set of recorded coaching sessions so you see what this is like in practice. Now, abstractly, it sounds a little weird. Like why does Amy have this doctor on that has a pig inside of him? And isn't this harsh? But it's actually a very loving process. And I want you to hear people going from feeling hopeless and despairing to feeling excited and optimistic and confident in just one session. And you will get a set of free food plan starter templates. This is a diet agnostic program. So you can do this as long as you're willing to nourish yourself in some way, whether that's, through a, Paleolithic or carnivore diet or through whole foods plant-based or, through macrobiotic or point counting or calorie counting. As long as you're not trying to eat like a 7-year-old and live on marshmallows all day, then I should be able to help you. And as long as you're not trying to starve yourself, I should help you. So at defeatyourcravings.com, click the big blue button. Anything else you could want to know, you'll be led to when you get onto that list. Um, Coaching, social media, all that kind of stuff you'll see on that list.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I will definitely be contacting you in the future.
I'm looking forward to it, Amy. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.